Today's program concerns the financial abuse of elders, which has become a growing problem in our country, especially with the increased usage of the internet. And we are fortunate enough to have two members from the Boulder District Attorney's Office here to talk to us about this, because the Boulder District Attorney's Office has made this a priority for enforcement and for assistance, and most importantly, for prevention. Because in this arena, a dollar of prevention is worth $1,000 of cure. So today we're going to hear from Christian Gardner-Wood, who's a senior deputy district attorney at the Boulder District Attorney's Office, and Lizbeth Parker, who is the Community Protection Division Specialist, who interfaces more with the victims than with the lawyers and prefers it that way. Please come on up and give them a warm round of applause.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be back at the Rotary Club. As some of you may recall, Michael Doherty had me as a guest a couple of months ago in anticipation to be able to come and talk to you this afternoon and talk to you about something that's important to me as the Director of Community Protection for the Boulder DA's office. But our efforts in terms of, hold this down a little bit, our efforts in terms of protecting our vulnerable victims and our vulnerable population here in Boulder County and across the state. As John indicated, our elected DA, Michael Doherty, who I'm honored to work for, this has always been a priority for him and for his office to make sure that those that are most vulnerable in our community are in a situation that they are being protected, and that we're doing not only the prevention that John talked about, but in a situation where we're vigorously prosecuting those that prey on and exploit those members of our community. So within our Community Protection Division that Liz and I serve in, we deal with elder abuse, financial fraud of both elders, and significant financial complex crimes. And we also do significant outreach to the community, which is another honor to be here at Rotary, in terms of talking about our immigration initiatives, our bias and hate initiative within the DA's office, and our outreach to the schools. So although I love being a prosecutor, I love being in the courtroom, I also have the great opportunity to be out on a regular basis in Boulder County and talking to groups like this, talking to our young people, and talking about prevention and the efforts that our DA does to protect this community and help this community in every way we can. So with that, what are we talking about when we're talking about elder abuse? In Colorado, when we're talking about elder abuse or somebody that's at risk, we're talking about somebody that is 70 years old or older, or somebody that has a physical or developmental disability and is considered at risk for that purpose. But what we're focused on today is the financial aspect of somebody that's at risk. When we look at that, Colorado has defined at-risk crimes for individuals above 70 or that meet some of those physical or developmental disabilities. And from the standpoint of financial, it increases the penalties quite substantially, actually. So if you look at the idea of theft of something under $500 of an at-risk elder is a Class 5 felony. If we're talking about the average theft, that would be a Class 3 misdemeanor. So significantly recognizes the exploitation and the exploitative aspects of our at-risk population. And if we're talking over $500 worth of value, that's a Class 3 felony in the state of Colorado. So that's as we look at theft. We also have a tool at our disposal, which I think is great in Colorado, called criminal exploitation of an at-risk individual. What that is where somebody uses coercion, undue influence, harassment, or deceptive practices to engage in exploitation or financial theft, economic theft from our at-risk population with those same penalties. Depending on the value, it's either a Class 3 felony or a Class 5 felony. So that could be just taking money from somebody. That could be the situation that we hear far too often nowadays in terms of scams. internet scams, telephone scams, social security scams. In 2020, one that we're very cognizant of this year is scams around the census, as we're starting the census process nationwide here in the United States. Liz is going to talk about that for us here in a little bit. Unfortunately, when we look at the statistics nationwide, the National Council on Elder Abuse tells us that 1 in 10 Americans age 60 or above have reported some form of elder abuse. But unfortunately, we also are in a situation where only 1 in 14 situations where somebody has been abused as an at-risk adult is reported. That's something that drives us to be out in the community and drives us to have these conversations from that prevention aspect. That's far too low. We know that it's happening far too often, and we know that we're not finding out about it nearly often enough. 1 in 14 just is not a good enough job of it being reported to authorities. There's factors that contribute both to why it's happening and also why it's not being reported as often. It's the vulnerabilities, the social isolation that we see at times with our at-risk population and our elder population. It's the physical, mental, or cognitive impairments that we see. And as Liz is going to talk about in a minute, it's also the folks that are engaging in this exploitation. It's the relationship that they have with those that have committed the theft, those that have exploited them. And in many examples, it's family members. And so it's happening very often, but again, it's loved ones that our at-risk elders aren't wanting to engage in reporting around. And so it's important for those of us in the community to be able to recognize the signs of it and also report on it so we can be in a preventive aspect, prevent these issues from continuing to happen. When we looked at our 2019 statistics at the Boulder DA's office, we had 741 victims of crimes that were above the age of 55. And we do 55 particularly because of our prevention efforts at the DA's office. We've engaged in grants and having a victim advocate that specifically works with and reaches out to our at-risk population. And we were able to secure that for 55 or older. So that's why these numbers put us at 55 or older. So these aren't all of our at-risk crimes. It's not necessarily those felony theft crimes that I was talking about or those criminal exploitation crimes. But for our victims, 741 in the varying categories, as you could see, that were dealt with and prosecuted in the DA's office. And notably, the highest category, which is a surprise when we're generally talking about statistics from the DA's office, the highest category is felony level cases. That speaks volumes to how serious these crimes are, but also how seriously we treat them. Usually when we look at statistics across any measure within the DA's office, you have more traffic cases, you have more misdemeanor cases than you do felony cases. Because of the importance that's placed on this population and the exploitation of our vulnerable citizens, you see that these statistics buck that trend, and we have 401 felony cases that involved our older population here in Boulder County. Turn it over to you.
You
Sure.
could still have it handle the clicker if you want. Thanks, Christian. And as Christian mentioned, a really saddening statistic that we look at all the time is while anybody, from what you see up on the screen, does and can commit elder abuse and financial fraud, it is by far most often the people that are close to older adults who perpetrate this fraud statistically. So I know the writing might be a little small on the pie chart, but certainly it's can be a family member, a caregiver who might come into an older adult's home to provide care or services on a regular basis or even an irregular basis, certainly people in an older adult's life, as well as staff or other members who come in and out of care facilities such as independent living or an assisted living facility. But if we add up the pieces of that pie chart that are family members, whether it is an adult child, a spouse, a grandchild, a niece or a nephew, that certainly is over 75% of the incidents that not only our office sees, but across the country. The statistic being one from the National Association of Adult Protective Services Organizations, who is a body across our nation as well as in Boulder County that receives the vast majority of reports of neglect and abuse of caregivers, as well as our law enforcement community, as well as our office. So it's certainly most often someone in an older adult's life, and certainly that greatest subcategory is a family member, which is concerning to us, and it's something that our office takes into account every time we are faced with one of these incidents or cases. It's something we are cognizant of in terms of how an older adult or someone else might be reporting the incident, the need for us to get the whole story on something before we go forward and really try and keep aware of things like the fact that, as Christian mentioned, somebody might be trying to isolate an older adult from giving a story. And the older adult, him or herself, might be very reluctant, obviously, to report such an incident when it might have something to do with family relationships, breaking up a family, somebody maybe not providing care, threats to an older adult member's independence. And then, just to kind of close up on the statistics that are provided to us nationally, as I'm sure you can imagine, the effects of elder abuse are grave. There are reports that show us that any form of elder abuse, not just financial exploitation, but certainly included, results in greater instances of premature death and hospitalization, becoming members of a care facility in disproportionate rates, where victims of elder abuse or financial fraud might lose financial or other resources to take care of themselves and age in place. Certainly financial exploitation causes economic losses, obviously, but also results often in greater reliance on healthcare, as well as greater reliance on assistive programs and benefits that are available in our community and others. Next question. So what are some of these warning signs, and especially given the prevalence of financial fraud and exploitation taking place in an older adult's immediate community of people that they know or that they're in contact with? Well, certainly abrupt changes, any kind of sudden change in somebody's financial documents is something that should be taken seriously, and that other family members perhaps can be made aware of and can kind of take a look at further. I'm talking about things like a power of attorney document or a will that has a sudden change to it without perhaps a family discussion that took place around it. Changes to beneficiaries on accounts, property titles and deeds. Certainly changes to major financial instruments don't necessarily mean that there is a crime being committed, but it's worth investigating further. It's worth having a conversation about with an older adult or certainly other family members, caregivers, those put in place to help manage finances in someone's later life. Certainly going along with the changes to the documents themselves would be an older adult's comments about something like that. So-and-so said, I have to change this. Account beneficiary, they want to be on my account. Again, when we take a look at these things, those comments could be something that we want to talk about further, and I think in our own families might merit a discussion further about why a change is being requested or why somebody feels a change needs to be made. Certainly we also see when there is actual unusual banking activity, bills piling up. Bills that aren't being paid, even though we are aware that an older adult certainly has the means to pay them. That could indicate perhaps that the money is being channeled somewhere else, either to someone else in an older adult's circle, or to a stranger in the form of a scam, for example. Certainly uncharacteristic gifts in the caregiving situation. It's just something to kind of keep an eye on. Is this person being influenced by someone else in their lives to give a large amount of cash or a large luxury item or something like that? And it's important, I think, when we think about these warning signs, again, we might not know what it means and if it is a cause for concern, but I guess the twofold kind of my thoughts about that when I speak to members in the community is that it's important to trust our instincts on these. It's important to continue or begin a conversation about them. And certainly, as Christian mentioned, and what we do throughout the community is that we are here to help answer those questions. Well, there are many times a week, including this morning, where I got a phone call by somebody saying, I don't know if this is something or not. We are here to talk about that and to become a resource about where to go next and what to do next. So, of course, as we all know, I think, financial exploitation and fraud does not just take place in our close circles of contacts, friends, family members, caregivers, but increasingly these days it takes the form of being scammed, whether it's on the phone, on the internet, via an email, a text, any one of these methods plus many, many more. It is a $3 billion business for scammers and rising. I think that latest figure wasn't even yet tallying all of 2019, but certainly $3 billion about into the first 3 quarters of last year. While older adults aren't necessarily targeted as victims of scams, there are certain places where they are, as a demographic, they lose more money to scams than younger groups of people. Frankly, they're not the groups, again, that report scams the most often to our watchdog organizations like the Federal Trade Commission. But when they do report, they report losing much more money than younger age demographics. So it is a concern. There are many reasons, of course, for this. That the phone is so prevalent in an older adult's life, and perhaps technology a little bit less so. We're used to answering the phone. We're used to trusting who is on the other end of it is who they say they are. And of course, part of the education effort that we make throughout the community every single time we speak is that just the same way that we wouldn't leave our pocketbook in the cart and go to the next aisle in the grocery store, we would have a modicum of suspicion about others' activity and just a desire to keep ourselves safe. We have to do that now with the phone and on the internet and through emails and texts and so forth. Every scam, old or new, involves getting somebody's money or personal information, like a Social Security number, a Medicare number, and as Christian mentioned, increasingly and will be very prevalent over the next few months, the U.S. Census. And we're starting an education effort about the census in our facilities as well as our senior centers this spring to just let people know that, for example, the census, no matter how they come at us or ask us to respond, is not going to ask for our Social Security number, ever. And if anybody is asking for our Social Security number, that's not our government and that's not our census. So things like in the prevention effort that we can all do. So I just listed up on the slide the prevalent kinds of scams, phone calls and computer scam attempts that we hear about most often in our office. Certainly the imposters, whether they're impersonating the government or a family member in trouble and so forth. All preying, of course, on our emotions. Whether they be fear or we've done something wrong and we have to rectify it right away, that immediacy, or preying on our emotion perhaps of elation that we've won something, that we have a windfall coming to us and so forth, somebody telling us that there's good news and then we just have to pay a little bit to get that big check that they're going to come to our door with, right? But as it was mentioned, increasingly online and computer scams are preying upon us. And whether that be a phishing email that looks like it came from our bank, or it could be a friendship that we form online from someone who is actually preying upon us and will eventually, if not today, eventually will come up with a story to ask us for money. and certainly text scams far and wide, and the one that we reported in the fall was about, even at the airport, we have heard instances of people tampering with USB charging stations and things like that to, when we unsuspectingly plug our device in to charge it while we're waiting for our flight, is secretly downloading our information. So we want to educate everybody about all of these things, but they certainly prey on older adults, perhaps more than others given the prevalence of phone scams, but they get us where we are, wherever that might be. And pretty soon, as we said, that'll be the census, but it's also in business. There are emails that purportedly come from a CEO, for example, that ask for a money transfer to be made very quickly, or for gift cards to be purchased for an event, and so forth. So they do target us in everywhere we might be.
And as much as we try and deal with them, I mean, I'm sure everybody here has gotten those spam phone calls, right? You get the phone calls, hey, your social security number has been tampered with. We're suspending your social security number. Give us a call back, give us more information, right? I love when I get that phone call on my work cell phone about that. I'm like, you understand this is a law enforcement emergency number that I have? And they're like, click, like, oh, well, no, if it's important, talk to me about it. But no, they don't want to talk to me. They don't want to talk to me about it. That or my credit card. I'm regularly told, hey, you didn't pay your bill. I'm like, I don't have a credit card associated with this phone number. Oh, and by the way, it's a law enforcement phone number. Oh, click, right away. So we all see that, and it's, as Liz indicated, it's not just our at-risk population, or our older adults, although unfortunately that is a concern, that there is a level of vulnerability and a level of financial wherewithal that they tend to be scammed out of more money. And to show how prevalent this is, recently, I'm sure most of you have heard, the city of Erie just recently got scammed out of a ton of money. And it was as simple as somebody calling the city and giving a new account number and new wiring instructions for the construction of the new Erie Parkway. That's all it took. And then that money for the payment of Erie Parkway gets funneled into some account, God only knows where, associated with God only knows who. And that's the unfortunate thing. It can happen just that quickly, is the issue. So what do we do about it? Mary Ann, who I want to recognize, Mary Ann Juris, for setting this up and coordinating this presentation for us. We jokingly, as we were walking in today, had to remember that this is a prevention talk, not a how-to guide, right? So just so everybody knows, it's not a how-to guide of financial fraud, but rather prevention. So the first thing around prevention, and the reason we're out in the community doing these talks, is that a little bit of knowledge goes a long way. That's the first way to prevent this. So knowledge about the fact that these scams exist, knowledge about the fact that this is out there. Really, knowledge is power at the end of the day when we're talking about these scams. What the different scams are and staying up to date on them. We were surprised when we first got the information, probably last fall, about the phone chargers at the airports. That was a new one for us. There's, the scammers are always a step ahead. We got to be right there, right on their tail. And that's what we try and do within the DA's office. So as soon as we heard about that, put information out there. Went on our social media page, talked to the Daily Camera, put that information out there, also talked with the National District Attorneys Association to get that information out there to make sure that we're preventing these issues and make sure people are aware so they can make decisions for themselves, recognizing that these issues are out there, that these scams exist. Looking at technology that can prevent this. A lot of times when we're out in the senior centers and with our senior population, more often than not, they're likely to have still that hardline telephone at home as opposed to the cell phone. The cell phones are great. They immediately give us a caller ID. We can make a decision about answering it or not. With that hardline phone, we have a lot of our elder population where they just have that hardline phone, they answer it, and that could be it. Then, somebody gets their hooks in them. So we talk about caller ID. We have caller ID boxes and talk about how they can get those. So there's technology out there. There's Also, technology applications for people's cell phones that will block some of these known spam numbers and these known phishing type of institutions that are out there. Some are provided as a separate application that folks can download and purchase. Some are done through the carrier, AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, have options where that can be a part of your account, so you're less likely to get these phone calls, and some of those known spam numbers will be blocked, and your phone won't even ring.
And are signed into law on Monday, in fact, by President Trump, was a requirement that phone providers start to require this on our cell phones, at least for now, and eventually on landline technology as well, and that they do so for no charge. So things are changing. We are getting some more tools, as Christian mentioned, but it is I would say it's about time, certainly, but it is happening.
Yeah. Last couple ideas from prevention is checking bank statements. So often nowadays we have our debit cards, we have our credit cards. It's easy to go to King Soopers, go to 7-Eleven, go to the gas station, swipe those cards, and by the end of the month I have so many transactions that it's a lot to look through my bank statement. But I'll tell you, my father-in-law, my wife is a power of attorney for him. She wasn't keeping as close an eye for a couple months as she thought she was. She looks back, for the past 2 months, he signed up for something, somebody got their hooks into him, signed up for some $30 product through a phone call that he got. Next thing we know, there were 50 different $30 charges over 2 months. Not through just this one business that he signed up for, but all of their associated, spammers and the associated folks that just got their hooks into his account number. And so seeing it, we were able to stop it. We were able to change account numbers. We were able to get some assistance from the bank, but being able to look at that and take note. And it was just small enough. It was a significant amount of money, but just small enough to where it wasn't that big $1,000 purchase, right? It didn't stand out until you really look through. So being able to do that.
As well as the photocopies that they now give us of the checks front and back. I mean, check fraud is still very prevalent, even in the day and age of technology, and enhanced by technology, because it's very easy sometimes to forge a check and make it look just like the real thing.
Last thing we want to talk about, and leave a couple minutes for questions, is reporting. So Colorado has a mandatory report law for people that are in essentially positions of trust, or in positions where they're more likely to have this information and engage with our at-risk population. So financial advisors, bankers, are mandated reporters in the state of Colorado because they're likely to get this information. And it's important to recognize, and I say this every time I talk, that if you see something, say something. And there's no detriment to that. Somebody that reports, they have immunity. If you're wrong and it's not criminal, like Liz talked earlier, no harm, no foul. But at least we had that opportunity to look at it and make sure that somebody's not being exploited. And so often I hear folks say, well, I didn't know. I couldn't prove that it was criminal. I couldn't prove that somebody was doing something wrong. I always say, don't worry about it. That's my job. That's why Michael hired me. That's why he pays me, right? So law enforcement, myself, we can look at it. We can make that decision. But I can't make that decision, I can't look at it if I don't get the information from folks. And it's important to recognize you don't just have to be a mandated reporter. Everyone is urged to report about any concerns that you have. So if you're a mandated reporter, you have a legal obligation to do so. But even if you're just concerned, it could be your neighbor. You may not be a mandated reporter, but you're concerned about what's happening with your neighbor. Give a call. Call the sheriff's office, call the BD, call Consumer Protection, call us. We're there for that. We'll have some conversations. We can look at it. We can make those decisions, but we can't make those decisions without the help of the community, without people that have an eye out there that we don't. And so we encourage people all the time to do that. If you see something, say something, mandated reporter or not. If you have a suspicion, let us know. The most egregious example I saw recently, I'm prosecuting a case. It's one of those familial theft cases. The daughter of my victim, over the course of 5 years, stole $250,000 from her mom. When her dad passed away, mom had no idea about the finances. She had no idea that there was money coming in from a lawsuit out on the East Coast. And mom thought she was living on her Social Security check. That was it. She didn't realize there was thousands upon thousands of dollars coming in every month, and her daughter was taking it. Well, we look at it, we talk to the bank, and we're like, did you not see a concern here? And what do you think the bank said? Yeah, it didn't seem right, didn't feel right. We had a little bit of a concern, but we just weren't sure. We couldn't prove, right? We couldn't prove it. I hear that so often, and I had to have that conversation. Not your job to prove it. You had the suspicion, that was enough, you give us a call. And then let us take it from there. So that's what I encourage folks, and we appreciate the opportunity of being here. The Community Protection Division, whether it's about elder abuse, about financial fraud, or just about the DA's office in the community and about the outreach that we are doing, and it could be just questions about the criminal justice process. It could be that, you know, a school that you're associated in wants information and wants to know about the criminal justice system, wants to know about the DA's office. That's what the Community Protection Division is for. That's why Liz and I do this work, because we love it and we love to be out here. So please reach out to us. We want to be a resource for you and for everybody else in the community.
Thank you.
So with that, questions?
Yes.
Do you have any more tips relative to the census? That's something on every 10 years, and obviously Social Security, but are there other things we should know about?
Of course. We do have other tips for the census. I am in almost daily contact these days with the federal census representative for Boulder County. As they are publishing information, they are providing it to our office, and what I know so far, although I haven't seen it, exactly what these things are going to look like, is that nothing official is happening with the U.S. Census 2020 until about mid-March of this year, and that will kick off from our federal government, the Census Bureau, via letter, as our federal government tends to want to communicate with us, right, in a legitimate fashion. So about March 10th or 12th, the government is beginning to mail out letters to each one of us in our households, giving us a list of instructions as to the ways we can respond to the census. And this year there will not be automatic door knockers, as people might have remember from past censuses. We will be invited to respond either online, by telephone, or through the paper form, as I think a lot of us are used to. And only if we don't respond in one of those ways by about the beginning of May will the door knockers start to appear. So I think it's important to remember in terms of census scams that nothing official is happening until about mid-March, and that the government will instruct us in that time by letter as to how to respond. I got my first census scam call this weekend on my cell phone. I didn't pick up the phone because I didn't recognize the number, but the voicemail that was left for me said press on my cell phone for the number of people, identified themselves as being from the census, and asked me to press a number into my keypad of how many people are in the household. And that question, when I pressed it, because I needed to know what would happen next. When I pressed that number, I was connected with a person on the other end of the phone who wanted to verify my Social Security number and bank account information. So that's the thing. And I then answered the call a few other times. I responded to it, and I punched in other numbers for different household members, and I got the same person asking for the same information. Didn't matter how many people were in my household, it was a way for me to respond, to get to a voice that was trying to get to my personal information. So that obviously is a fake, but it's important to remember that the real effort will happen in March. We do have written materials on this as well that I'm happy to share with Marion or John or the Rotary organization in terms of flyers and things which give timelines and a bit more information than we have time to give today. I'm happy to share that with you all.
Well, Christian and Liz, I can't thank you enough for being here and sharing all this information with us. If you can give me more, we will be happy to put it in our newsletter.
Terrific.
I gave up on waiting outside to be arrested from all the phone calls told me to be outside
Right.
with my Social Security number. But thank you very, very much. What you do is so important to our community. And
Thank you for the
we
opportunity.
really
We
appreciate
really
your
appreciate
being here.
Thank you all
Thank
so
you.
much for having us. We'll be around if there are questions. We'll stick around for a while. Please feel free, come and chat with us. But again, an honor to be here and appreciate all the great work that Boulder Rotary is doing.
Thank
So in honor of your talks here today, we are very, very close, this close to ending polio. And in your honor, 100 doses of polio vaccine are being donated to the
thank
Polio Plus Fund.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank you.
It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.